Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for Revolutionize Your Demos for Maximum Impact with Mila Austin. My name is Lindsay Doherty. I am a sales executive here at Consensus, and I will be the moderator for today's session. DEMOFEST is presented by Consensus. We transform how you sell with Consensus, the first product experience platform. You can automate demos, drive faster decisions, and accelerate growth. You can learn more about us at goconsensus.com, or you can click Watch a Demo at the top of your screen. Of course, we love participation, so we encourage you to do that today. You can find a few ways to engage with us on the right side of your console. That chat function will allow you to connect with us as well as other attendees. I see some of you are checking in right now. We've got people from Orlando, New Jersey. That's awesome. So you can find more helpful resources in the Docs tab. And lastly, your speaker will answer any questions at the end of the session. So please ask your questions at any time through the Q&A box. If at any time you're having technical experiences, head to the gear at the bottom of your screen. And this is where you will see a help document to troubleshoot common issues. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Mila Austin. Have you ever wondered what separates a good demo from a truly outstanding one? Today, we're lucky to have Mila Austin, an expert in captivating presentations and impactful demonstrations, here to guide us through the art of demo skills. With a wealth of professional experience, Mila knows exactly how to turn a product, idea, or solution into something unforgettable. So get ready, because in this session, we promise to be both insightful and inspiring, and we're in for a treat. Mila, they are all yours.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Audio. All right, Lindsay, can you see my screen?
Yes, you are all set.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Thanks for joining, everybody. You know, everybody on this call gives presentations every day, right? From a phone call with your boss to maybe a demo to a room full of prospects. But let's assume that you are the best in the industry. You have so many credentials that mom brags about you to all her friends. Customers love you. They write great reviews on your website. You're obviously, I could tell by some of the pictures in here, you're the best looking, best dressed, and most articulate. However, what happens? Unfortunately, now our prospects have access to the web where they can easily find competitors that may have just as much experience, credentials, and maybe just as good looking as you are. When everything else is equal, your presentation can give you the competitive edge to make sure your product is the product they choose. Now you may be wondering, how did I get into this? What made me start working on presentations? And if you do pre-sales or demos, that's how I got started. I was doing pre-sales and my sales rep called me. He said, Mila, there's somebody who wants, and I'm a CPA, so I actually sold tax software. You can't get more exciting than tax software. But I got a call and it said, Mila, there's a hot prospect. All they want to do is see how the tax software works. Go down there. This should be a quick sale. You know, go on down. So I go down and I meet a man, and he kind of looks like a little bit like Robert Redford and his assistant Sally. And they go, we're so excited to see you, Mila. Please come into our room. We can't wait to see what your product has to offer. Well, obviously, I'm very excited. So when we go there, we start, I know this product very well, extremely well. So as we go in, he dims the light and I put my demo on the screen. He has like a full version screen there. And I start going through everything that our product does. I mean, it does a lot. So I'm starting with, basis allocation, all that fun tax stuff. And I see him and he kind of looks down and he looks at his watch and his nice Rolex watch. And I'm like, what's he doing? He must be looking at the time because he wants to make sure he has enough time for my presentation. And then I keep going. I see him sit back a little bit and his eyes are closed. And so what do I think? I think, okay, well, he's visualizing how he's going to use this tax software. So I do what I would think you'd keep doing. I just keep going. So I continue going. Well, all of a sudden I'm presenting and I hear and literally he's snoring. He's snoring in the middle of my presentation. And so what do you do when someone falls asleep in your presentation? Well, I did what any good pre-sales demo person would do. I continued to go through everything that I had in my software. And we turn the lights on and he kind of wakes up and he shakes my hand. He goes, oh, that was really good. Thank you. Now, my question is, I left. Do you think he bought? And if you think the answer is no, you are correct. He never bought. And I did everything to try to make him to buy, you know, when you have that deal and everyone's like, oh, it was a sure thing. And I brought him candies. I brought him books. I brought him all kinds of things. And he never bought. And it was from that moment that I thought there's something really wrong with my presentations. And so what I did from there is I just started reading presentation books. And then I was like, this isn't enough. I went to a class that talks about presentations, and it was put on by the world champion of Toastmasters. And then I got certified in public speaking, and it took about a year. But in that year, my demos changed from putting people to sleep to getting between a 75 to 85% close ratio when I got to a demo. So it made a huge difference. And ever since then, been my passion doing demo skills. So what we're going to do is one thing I would never want to do on a demo is not be able to talk to you. But since we can't talk, I thought we could make it a little bit interactive in another way. I'm going to play a demo, and I want you to think about the things that you think went really bad in this demo. And kind of write your top 2 or top 3, and let's see if they change by the end of the presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play here.
Hi, my name is Mila Austin, and today I am excited to have you here. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all the different things that Consensus allows you to do. So let's go ahead and let's get started. We can see we have this dashboard here. It's Demolytics, demo boards. Let's start here. We're on Demolytics, demo boards, public links, demos, IDEX fire and safety, and that's for just your organization. This one is one of our customers. We have our settings, we have integrations, and we have our help. Now, I want to start here with our settings. This is something that you are just going to love. I am so excited to show you. So here you can see that there's a lot of different types of roles that you can have, along with you being able to make your own role if you have something specific that you would like to do with the role. So here we'll start with our administrative role. Now you can imagine the administrative can do everything. We'll then look at our content author role. So hi, my name is Mila Austin, and today
in the chat, if you can write just a few things that you saw went, well, if you really liked it, or you thought went really bad. But I could tell you that through the many demos that I have seen, this would be something that wouldn't be uncommon, right? And you've probably sat through presentations before and you're like, this is something that they sound like the typical demo. But let's talk about how much do people remember? So we're doing our presentations today. You may be spending the whole time at DEMOFEST. Immediately about 10 minutes after this presentation, how much do you think you remember? If you said 50%, you're pretty much correct. If you said under 50, I'm already in trouble because that means we have a lot more work to do to make our presentations memorable. The next day, how much do you think you'll remember? So 10 minutes after this presentation, you remember about 50%. The next day, you'll remember about 25%. The next week, you're looking more about 10%. So many times we do presentations for our prospects. Do they automatically go back and say, yes, I'm purchasing? What happens? They usually go back to a committee, to a board, to maybe other coworkers. Now, what happens if they only remember 10% of our presentation? What are they going to tell others about our product? And what would they tell it makes us better? Will they even remember what makes us better than our competition? How can we make them remember us and what makes us different and bring that information back to their departments? That's what we're going to look at today. And I like to think of something called the SAP method of doing your presentations. I like SAP because it's sticky, right? We want to make our presentations stick. Now, do our presentations doing it this way take a little bit more time? Absolutely. Now, why do you want to spend the time and kind of go through this SAP philosophy? And this is what we're going to be looking at today is these three pieces: the start, the anchor, and how to present. I was going out with a guy, and he was a sales rep, and he was talking about, how many times he had tried to get this prospect. He was telling me he was so proud. He's like, it's been 8 months. I've been trying to get this prospect. I finally landed him. We're going to do a presentation. We're all in the car. It's the manager, the sales rep, and me. And he's like, I'm so excited. And I go, well, I'm just there observing. I said, well, great. Like, how many times did you prepare or practice this presentation between the two of you? And he goes, practice it? No, I do better just winging it. And it's amazing to me how much time we'll spend getting a prospect, how much time we'll take to actually get that meeting. But the time we necessarily spent toward the presentation is just something you think you can wing. And I would say that's pretty common, in our tech industries. A lot of times you do the same presentation, you feel like you know it, and you start winging the presentation. Today, when we look at the SAP, it takes just a few minutes, but you really are going to start customizing your presentation for each and every prospect. So S, we're going to start strong. How do we make sure that it's engaging opening with the tone and really grabs the attention? We're going to look at the anchor. So how can you have them remember the points that you want them to remember? And we're going to talk about different ways that you can anchor. And then last is presenting. How do we really polish our delivery? How do we make sure our delivery is good for our prospects?
Where did everybody go? Coral, get inside the house, Coral. No, Coral, don't. You'll be fine. Just get inside, you, right now.
Love about starting with the Finding Nemo story is because you start thinking about how all of your favorite movies, sitcoms, they always start with action, right? This is exactly how Finding Nemo starts. Marlin and his wife are excited about her new home, waiting for eggs to hatch. The wife gets eaten by a barracuda, and all that's left is one egg, Nemo. I mean, probably after watching that preview, you might want to go back home and just watch it again because you're like, oh, how did that end? The Finding Nemo sets the stage for the rest of the movie. It starts off with a bang. It draws you in to the rest of the story. A lot of the foreshadowing about Nemo. This is how our presentations should work, to be like the story in Nemo. But how do you do it, right? How do we get them into our presentation and leave them excited for more? I like to call this my start with a bang. And what I challenge you is anytime, if you take one thing away from today's presentation, it's just don't start your presentation like everybody else. Now, we think about our opening of the speech, and there's pretty much a few of the same ways that you'll see these presentations start. And I'll challenge you to see how many start maybe this week, maybe not, but ones that you start listening to, right? What are the first things that speakers say? They'll say, "Hi, my name is Milla Austin. I work at IDEX Fire and Safety. I'm really excited for this, and this." What do you think when you hear that? You're like, okay, I'm on my computer. Maybe I should start seeing what I should have for dinner tonight. Maybe it's time to respond to this text message, because you're not drawn in. You sound like everybody else. Now, of course, there's the other way that other people's, you might hear a presentation start where it's, is it working? Is my computer working? Is it set up? Oh, can you see this? Can you see this? And a lot of technical issues right up front. That could be another way that you see a presentation. Now, when do you find out if someone's going to listen? When did you decide if you were going to listen to this presentation by me? How many seconds did it take? Well, they say the average is in the first 7 seconds, they will know if they like you. In the first 30 seconds, they will decide if they're going to listen for more. And I hate to tell you, ladies, it's actually a little bit less for the ladies. Men are a little more forgiving, but the ladies, yes, it's even faster. You decide if you're listening, if you like me, if you don't like me, if you're going to listen, if you're not going to listen. So when you start your presentation with unpleasant pleasantries, right? It wastes a lot of time and it gets people disengaged right up front. If you do your presentation like a sitcom, what do? I have Jerry Seinfeld in here. They jump in right away. If you're watching, if you like those murder mysteries like I do, they show the dead body on the floor, right? They found it. If you can think about it, anything that is expected is not interesting. If you need to come out with a bang. So what are some of the best ways, or how do you come out with a bang? We're going to talk about that. Now, before we even start our presentation, because you might be thinking, well, Milla, I need to introduce myself before we get in there. They don't know who I am. There's a couple things that we're going to do right away before that presentation. Now, I know a lot of you, since we're on a virtual meeting, you're probably doing things virtually, right? So before you even jump into that presentation, before it starts, do a couple things that make it a little bit different. Instead of like, hey, consensus demo, right? Change it to the Smith Company growth strategy, right? Change it to make it a little bit more personal and a little bit more exciting right at the very front. Before you start, make sure that you ask anything specific you want me to cover. Start that introduction before you even get on there. And if you can, get their logo or maybe a Post-it note on the back that just says welcome Jen and team, or has the company logo there, because before you've even started that, you've shown a little bit of trust. You've got them excited. Before you start, you also want to use your champion. Now, Lindsay did an introduction for me. What did that do right away? If you say it builds credibility, it does, right? I gave Lindsay exactly what I wanted her to say. And this is the same thing that you can do for your champion. Now, if your champion is somebody that's been trying to get your solution in their business, you can have them read it. Sometimes our champion is our sales rep. So you may need them to introduce you. You want to set yourself up to success. So many times I hear somebody say like, and then we have Mark Smith, who's going to be demoing your software today. We want to be set up as an expert and somebody they're excited for. So what I always do is in my introductions, I kind of put very specific things for my champion to say. It would say, over the past few weeks, we've been exploring options for project management tools to find our needs. One solution we considered is ABC PM tools. Today, we are fortunate enough to have the opportunity to learn more about it directly from our rep. Now, if you notice what I said our rep, because why? That builds the emotional connection, right? It's not the rep, it's our rep. Right away, that will kind of build those emotional connections, especially when we're dealing with something virtual. Allow me to introduce Milla Austin, a partner at ABC PM Tools. Milla will take us through the platform, its key features, and how it can support and work for us. We're in for an insightful session. So without further ado, or we're in for a treat. That's one of my favorite ones. So without further ado, Milla Austin. And I always put in there, if you heard Lindsay say it, you're in for a real treat. That's something I put in there every single time because I want them to get excited and build that anticipation. So when I get on the stage or when I take over control, I don't have to say, hi, my name is Milla Austin. A lot of times they already have that information. So I'm having them kind of not pay attention because it's stuff that they already know. So now it's up to us, right? We have to do our big bang. We already know, no matter what, we're not saying, hi, my name is Milla Austin. I'm from blah, blah, blah. A couple ways that I like to do it is one, start saying something like, congratulations. And I focus it on something that they've done, right? Congratulations. I saw that you made, record earnings in the 2025 first quarter. That's amazing. Or, congratulations. I saw you worked one of the top places for women to work in 2025. Whatever it is, mention something that they're proud of. It doesn't take a lot of work to find something to congratulate them on, but it surprises them with a little bit of knowledge and recognition of something that's meaningful for them. So it sets the whole tone of gratitude, right? Instead of thank you for the time, I would say things like, thank you for the opportunity to present how our solution can help your team achieve specific goals. It helps build rapport right away. And then doing that right from the start really changes. And that could be a lot of different ways. You could start with a question. You could start with a fact that they may not realize. I always like that one that, more people are alive today than have ever died. Something interesting that just pulls them in. But that's how you start differently. That's how you do it with a bang. Do not start with the same old, hi, my name is Milla Austin. Let me show you about my company and the million things about my company and why I'm so great. We start that engaging. The next one is, it's the all about me. I like to call this the I-you factor. And what you'll notice when you hear the I-you factor is in a lot of presentations, you might hear, I am so excited to show you. I really love this. I can't wait to do this. And you make the presentation all about you. And if you listen to yourself and maybe record it, you can see how many times you say I versus you. And it's very easy to change it to a you, right? So saying something like, you'll see this, or what you will find exciting, what you will notice will help you get home earlier in the evening. Those really make a difference instead of the I's. So really looking at your I-you factor, also making sure that you go through and you make it memorable, right? By keeping those connections. When you make it very specific for the U's and their accomplishments. So one thing to check, and if you're looking at my demo at the very beginning, one thing you want to listen to is the I-you factor. All right, next. How many times, and you may call this an agenda, right? But I like to call it a roadmap. Your clients need clarity. They don't need clutter. If you don't grab their attention right from the start, it's likely they'll tune out and stop with even the good stuff. That is where the roadmap comes in. It's their pathway to the solutions. So if you start it, you want to say the 3 things that we're going to focus on today, or the 3 challenges that you're facing today. One thing I always like to talk about first is what are the major risks in their space? Is there regulations that they're dealing with? There are lawsuits that are coming up on something? Is there trends disrupting the industry? What's keeping them up late at night? Then you talk about your solutions, right? Show how your expertise, our unique approach is something that will help solve the real world problems for them. And then you want to highlight the tools, the methods that make it into the workflow. So if you break your roadmap into 3 parts, really where they are going, right? Where are they starting and where are they going? It makes sure that your presentation is very clear and they're able to follow along. When we started, does anyone remember what our 3 parts were that we were going to talk about? If you said SAP, right? It's the start, the anchor, and then our presentation skills, making it very clear exactly where we're going. If you've ever sat in those presentations and you're like, how does this relate? Or where are they going? That's people that don't have a very clear roadmap on the presentation and where they want to hit each and every time. Now, we've talked a little bit about the anchor. The anchor is what drives your point home. So remember I told you, I said, listen, a lot of people aren't going to remember what you say 10 minutes from now. But the anchor is really what helps people remember. It helps you become remember and be repeatable. So each one of your roadmaps or points that you're going through your presentations, you actually have to think of what that anchor could be. So you really need to deliberately put in that anchor. So those anchors could be a lot of different things, right? So you could make it an activity, right? So get your audience involved by asking a question. What is something that, what are the challenges you have? What are some of your experiences? How often have you faced this issue in your workflow? Now, you also can use analogies. I love analogies. If anyone isn't familiar with what an analogy is, it's a relatable comparison to simplify complex ideas. And I always use one of these when I'm talking about, people that might be negative in some of my presentations. If you've ever heard of Maine, they have a lot of crabs there. And they're pretty famous for their crabs. And if you have a bucket, you'll walk through, you'll see buckets of crabs. And if you look, you'll notice there's no lids on the crabs. And you wonder, why is there no lids? Wouldn't the crabs just crawl out there of the bucket? Well, what happens is whenever some crabs try to get out of the bucket, all the other crabs pull them back down. They grab onto them and pull them down. So I use that analogy a lot of times when I'm talking about, not letting naysayers pull you down from getting a new idea or letting you out of the way you always do things. So those are some things that really help anchor that point home. There's some other things that you can use, acronyms. So we use the SAP acronym. That really helps so people can easily see and remember. When you use something like SAP, if I said, at the very beginning, start, anchor, and presentations, you may not remember it. But when you throw that SAP in there, it makes it easily recallable and people can remember it. And last but not least is I love a story. I mean, people want to relate to a story. If you can think about the story I told you when I first started my presentation skills, and I always like to throw this in, what did he look like? Does anyone remember what he looked like? And I can't see the chat, so, but if you can remember what the guy looked like that fell asleep in my demo. And if you're saying he looked like Robert Redford, you're dead on. And what kind of watch did he have? And if you put a Rolex, you absolutely are correct. The more details you can give into a story, it helps people visualize it. They can take it home. And that is what really anchors our points home, is that you can start thinking about it, you can visualize it, and it really is hard to resist a good story. So this is one of my favorite ways to get people involved. It's because it's so relatable and people can recall it and they can retell it. So if you think about the tortoise and the hare, right? What was the moral of that story? You probably haven't heard that story for years and years and years, but it's easy for you to recall maybe something different than what you learned in third grade so many years ago, right? You're not able to do that. And so throwing stories into your presentation are going to make a huge difference. Now, you may say, but Mila, I'm doing technology presentations. Like the tortoise and the hare is not going to help me. How do we put stories from our customers into our presentations? Well, one of the ways to do it is call your customers that are satisfied. Say, hey, let me know a little bit about the story. What were you guys going through? Ask if you can record them. And then what you do is you take and you compress those stories. Now, you never want to lie in a story. You always want to tell the truth. However, we do want to make the story a little bit more like a movie. So even though that you may think of a movie, in a movie, you may watch it, it's an hour and a half, but it's months and months and months of information. That's what we want to do with our client stories. So you can take it, and I always like to say, somebody from, let's say, like, okay, I'll go Sarah from Tech Corp. Sarah from Tech Corp called me and she said, Mila, help. I'm having a huge issue. We've got these new regulations. I'm not sure to handle it. Can you help me? So right there, one, I built dialogue. Two, she probably didn't call and say help, but she did eventually push out for a demo. So it's not lying. It's making the story relatable. And then what I'm able to do is I'm able to bring Sarah into my presentation, because I can easily tell you, man, you are so lucky. I'm the best. I am so good at presentation skills. I am the best trainer. You're so lucky to be here. What do you think when you hear that? If you think like, oh yeah, she's not good. She's so stuck on herself, right? If I say I'm the best, it's not believable. But if I bring my customers in and they're saying how good I am. So if I say, when Sarah, CTO at Tech Corp, called us, she said, we're expanding our cloud infrastructure and our current tools aren't scaling. That's where we stepped in, not only to provide a solution, but to make the process seamless. Now Sarah's experience sets the stage. It's not about what you do, it's how the client's problem got fixed. And then I'd say, now Sarah calls me and she says, Mila, I can't believe what a difference this made. All these processes weren't working and now they are. That way, Sarah is telling me I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm the best. So makes a huge difference. Another part is not just selling the story or having our clients really be references inside of our presentation, but it's also selling the vision. I always this is the first car that I ever purchased. And I like it because it's the story about how I got it was so true and real in demos as it is for, you think about a car salesperson. So you got to remember, I'm 25, first car purchase. And the guy comes in, he goes, ma'am, I want to show you this car. He goes, you're going to love it because there's a lot of things that make it very safe. Even though it's a convertible, it has a roll top so that if anything happens, you'd be safe. It's got dual airbags. It's actually got a side airbag. It's got, power, whatever it was, power steering, power brakes, a lot of stuff for a 25-year-old. Go to another lot, same exact car, same car. And the guy looks at me and he goes, man, that car would look great on you. I'm like, what? He goes, I could just vision. He goes, I don't know. I just saw you in that car. He goes, I can see you out with your girlfriends. You would look great. I can imagine you just trolling the town, having a lot of fun. The wind is blowing through your hair. He goes, I can just see it. Right then, what do you think I did? He sold me the vision. He didn't sell me all the features and functionalities. He sold me where I could be. And I bought that car. Of course, the guy lied. I hated the convertible. It was awful. My hair got ratted. It was a total mess. But he did sell that vision. And that's what we want to do, right? Is we want to sell the result, not the tool. You can think about doing 2 demos. Demo 1 focuses on, hey, right here, our tool integrates seamlessly with your CRM system. If you change that with this integration, your team will save hours every week and reduce errors and customer handoffs. That makes a big difference on how you're putting that out. You're making sure which one has the clear outcome. Remember that emotion drives decisions. Same thing with my car. So even in tech, decisions are rooted in emotions. The audience really has to feel the impact your solution will have. If you frame it around them achieving success, show them better, simpler, more productive, fuller, and really build that, you build that vision. And when they hand it off, because they're going to talk to their committees, guess what? That is what they remember. So now we're going to talk about kind of my favorite piece here, the presentation skills. So we've done a lot already, right? So we figured out that we are not starting like everybody else. We're going to start with a bang. We're going to start congratulating them. We're going to start by saying something that's exciting for them. And then we're going to anchor them with either stories, analogies, questions, something that makes it different, something that makes it more unexpected. But now we're in presentation skills. And if you do all of that well, but your presentation isn't good, guess what? People will still disengage. So how do we have that executive presentation, especially in virtual demos, right? Virtual demos are so different than, being live. When I first started in sales, everything was live. And now most everything, especially our presentations, are virtual. And I've got the question a lot of times, do you even have to have your camera on? Even if the client doesn't want to put it on. And my suggestion would be yes, always have the camera on. I actually have my camera on 2 different solutions so I can see what I look like to my customers, know if there's any lag. I keep myself as logged in. So that's one way, keeping your lighting, making sure your microphone works, investing in that, especially as we go to a virtual. Now, presentation skills don't mean that you're naturally gifted or charismatic. I'm going to show you somebody very charismatic, but that doesn't necessarily make good presentation skills. What happens is when confidence meets communication, right? It's something that you can learn, even if it's something that you don't excel in right now, you can learn with practice. So we're going to look about how we can use presentation skills or tricks and tips that we can use. And let me share with you somebody who's very charismatic, but probably didn't get the point across because you can have too much emotions. So here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Starr County Republican Party Executive Committee, good evening. And thank you not only for your attendance, but for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Phil Davison, and I am seeking our party's nomination for the position of Starr County Treasurer on November 10th, November of 2010, excuse me. In terms of my background, I am from the village of Minerva, where I'm serving my 13th year of elected service as a Minerva Council member. In terms of education, I have a bachelor's degree in sociology, a bachelor's degree in history, a master's degree in public administration, and a master's degree in communication.
I love that one because one, he has a lot of energy, and what he was saying wasn't bad, but how he delivered it made all the difference. And I think that one got a ton of different views just because people were like, wow, the way you present something can make a huge difference. And this is always one of my favorite sayings, especially, us here in public speaking. The mind is a wonderful thing. It starts working the minute you're born and never stops until you get up to speak in public. And it's really hard, when you start public speaking, to not be nervous, especially when it's your job and you're trying to do a good job. and things maybe don't always go as you planned. Now, remember, when you start going out there and maybe you say something wrong or you say it a little off, you are the expert, right? So you are the expert. They don't know what you're saying is wrong. So you don't need to go back and correct yourself unless it's something that's major, but you don't need to say, oh, I'm sorry, I missaid that. Just keep going, because you are, the expert there, and what they don't know won't hurt them. So the other thing is, what do you think people remember? We talked about this at the beginning. They remember two things. They remember the beginning and the end. So even though we have our roadmap and we're putting that in there, the beginning and the end are what you're going to find is most impactful. So if you can practice anything, you don't have a lot of time, practicing the beginning, feeling very comfortable, practicing your big bang, and then just making sure that you have a wrap up and an end will make all the difference when you start thinking about presentations. Now, we've probably all seen this, right? For my presentation today, I'll be reading the PowerPoint slides word for word. Have you ever sat through a presentation and they basically just read everything that was on the PowerPoint? Why do you think people do that? And if you said it's because they just don't know their information, that could be it. They could be nervous, right? Do you find it engaging when people read the PowerPoint slides? Or do you find yourself kind of skimming? I always feel if the information is on the slide, there's no reason for me to be saying it. They can read it themselves. People actually read faster than they can listen. So the slides need to be there to support your message, not replace it. The audience is reading instead of listening to you, then the impact of your whole message is lost. So remember that if you do have PowerPoint slides, make sure that you do put them just as an enhancement for your presentation. Another one is talking too much. So for me, this is a lot of talking for a presentation because we just don't have any verbal communication and I can't see the chat. But how much should you talk during a presentation, especially a sales demo? I've seen it probably 90%, 95%, 80%, but this should be more like a conversation, not a monologue, right? You want to listen, you want to say open-ended questions. And I always like to think of this back to my days of when I was in science school. Who, what, when, why, and how. Those are those open-ended questions that start getting your audience talking. I hear a lot of presentations, they go, does this make sense? Now, what are people most likely going to say when someone says, does this make sense? Oh yeah, it makes sense. They don't want to seem like they don't understand, especially if there's a large group. That's a closed-ended question. It doesn't get people to answer. So things like, how do you currently solve this issue? What challenges come up with your current solution? Why is solving this so important for you right now? Are better ways to get that conversation started. What else can you do? Especially in a virtual room, right? We've had so many times where it's virtual, it's a lot harder. I can remember one time we were doing a demonstration and I had passed it off to my coworker and he started talking and he was, just kept going. And he would say, does this all make sense? He'd get a yes, one word answer. Okay, do you have any other questions? No. And the whole time it was just quiet. He couldn't get him to talk. And the only thing that actually ever ended to get him to talk was he forgot to get off mute and he started talking to his dog. He said, you're my cute baby. Who's my cute baby? And they all started cracking up. And once they did that and they broke the ice and they built that emotional connection, it really changed the whole aspect of the demo. So being able to connect with your audience, especially when we have virtually, it's calling out names, right? So it's calling out saying, hey, Lindsay, what do you think about that? I had somebody, and this was actually huge. They would say, okay, we're going to do a trivia. Let's see who knows the best at trivia. And made it like a little competition to get people engaged. So getting them engaged, making sure that you're not the one who's talking too much. And then my favorite is silence. if you have a huge point that you're trying to make, it's okay to be perfectly silent and let it sink in. Oftentimes you'll ask a question and then the rep or yourself want to answer because there's nobody answering instead of just the silence. And if you asked a really good question, you would want to make sure that you have silence because they might be thinking of the answer. There's often the time to rush somebody or kind of like just break that silence, but give them a minute. I want to show a video of Steve Jobs. He's one of my favorite speakers because I think he did such a nice job really following, a lot of different best practices, but watch how he uses these pauses in his presentation.
All righty. So that is the iPod. Pretty cool, huh? We've just started. So again, touch your music. Just scroll through your songs, scroll through your playlists. It's incredible. Widescreen video like you've never seen on a portable device, 160 pixels per inch, gorgeous screen quality, gorgeous album art, and cover flow. It's the best iPod we've ever made. Again, some of the screenshots, it's unbelievable.
Okay, if you noticed in his presentation, the deliberate use of pauses whenever he shared something that was important, he wanted to pull a point to. Now, the pause didn't have to be a long pause, but how many times have you seen a presentation where you're like, that was really fast and they're having a hard time digesting it? We want to make sure we give people time to reflect, absorb, and make sure they engage and let their curiosity grow. The next thing that you want to do is rehearse. Now, not everybody's favorite is to rehearse. And the worst, right, is I always say, listen, why don't you record yourself? You've got a virtual meeting. Why don't you go ahead and put a recording of yourself? And people go, I can't stand to hear my voice. Well, guess what? Your customers have to hear it. So making sure that you record yourself and see how you come across, see what words you say. I had a couple filler words that I always would say. Basically was one of them. And I'd say basically, and I didn't realize it until I had said it like 50 times throughout the presentation. I would never have caught on to that unless I watched myself on recording. It does really make a difference knowing your material and at least rehearsing those beginning and those ending parts. You hear a lot of people say, I don't have time to rehearse. One, I do better winging, right? Oh, this is my favorite. I just do so much better when I wing it because I don't want it to sound rehearsed. And my follow-up to that is, when you watch a movie, do they sound like they're rehearsed or do they sound confident? They sound confident because they know what they're saying. They've been practicing it, and you don't need to say everything word for word, right? Your demo is not going to be scripted to that point, but you should have a couple key pieces that you feel very comfortable saying and practicing. Now, I love Steve Jobs again, so I'm going to show one where he would go in 3 days early before he would have a release of a product. And he would say the same presentation again and again and again. And I want you to watch this and tell me if you think it looks rehearsed, even though this part was rehearsed probably about 40 times. And see if it looks natural or rehearsed to you.
I want to show you something truly remarkable, which is Google Maps on iPhone. I hit our Maps application here, and it's coming up. And it shows us North America, and I'm going to go to Moscone West. That's where we are right now. And here we are. Boom. That's where we are. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look for something. I'm going to certainly want a cup of coffee afterwards, so I'm just going to look for Starbucks, right? Starbucks. So I'm going to search for Starbucks, and sure enough, there's all the Starbucks. Now, I can get a list of Starbucks here, so I can pick that one if I want. And I can even go look at that Starbucks. And there it is. And let's give him a call.
Good morning, Starbucks. How can I help you?
Yes, I'd like to order 4,000 lattes to go, please. No, just kidding. Wrong number. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I mean, how he did it, very seamless. It looked just like, somebody that had done it right then thought about it. But he had had a knack for coming in and just relentlessly practicing. And that's what you should do with your presentations. Also be watching for jargon. So another nice thing to practice is practice, especially in our industries that we might be that are very specific. We have the thing that we use jargon a lot of times. Making sure that you practice in front of somebody like a grandmother or a mother or a friend and see if they know what we're talking about. You really want to practice your customer stories as well. So if you've got those recordings and you're condensing them to make them quick, fast stories in your presentation so they can be relatable, you'll want to practice those well and make sure that people can follow. Now, my very favorite last one, and we're going to do this today, but not my best practice, which is a Q&A session. What happens at the end of your demo? How many times do you go, okay, we're all done. Do you have any questions? And, like Lindsay said, we're going to do it today just because we're in a chat session, but it would not be one of my best practices. It seems harmless, right? Like you're like, hey, any questions? But what is the problem with the Q&A session? Well, ending with a Q&A session, especially even in a virtual session, is hard because what happens? What if you get a tough question, something that we can't answer, right? They throw a technical question, something that might be outside of our area of expertise. What does that have us do? That's what people remember. We can't answer that question, and that's how our presentation ends. Or what if it's something that we can't even do and our competition can do? And that's how it ends. What if it's something that just changes the whole tone because it's something negative and it loses control of the flow of our presentations? So if we do it at the very end, we have the chance of derailing all of the good momentum that we had. Now, I always would say, ask questions throughout, like, hey, how are you doing this? How does this compare? Asking those questions throughout your whole presentation so it becomes more of a dialogue. And at the end, it's not something that you've just shown up and thrown up, kind of like we did today, but they have those opportunities to ask Q&A. But let's say that, you do have to ask questions at the very end because it's something like, people can't talk. It might be like what we have today where we just don't have the option to do Q&A until the very end. You at least need to have a wrap-up slide. So no matter what, remember the two most important parts of your presentation are the very beginning, that's what people are going to remember, and the very end. What do you have them walk away with? What gives that lasting impression? So now we only have a few minutes left. I'm going to show the demo that I had at the very beginning, and I just want you to see if you can catch any of the things that I did that you would change based on our presentation that we did. So here we go. We're not going to listen to the whole thing because it is pretty boring, but let me go ahead and get started.
Hi, my name is Mila Austin, and today I am excited to have you here. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk through all the different things that Consensus allows you to do. So let's go ahead and let's get started. We can see we have this dashboard here. It's Demolytics, Demo Boards. Let's start here. We're on Demolytics, Demo Boards, Public Links, Demos, IDEX Fire and Safety, and that's for just your organization. This one is one of our customers. We have our settings, we have integrations, and we have our help. Now, I want to start here with our settings. This is something that you are just going to love. I am so excited to show you. So here you can see that there's a lot of different types of roles that you can have along with you.
So I'm curious, did they change? What were different things that you saw in that presentation that you would automatically be able to give me as feedback versus what you maybe started with? And hopefully it's different things that we were, you can put in the chat here that you saw that were like, okay, we should never do a presentation like that. But we do see them very often. And so with that, I want you to think about the closing. So how do you leave, that lasting impression at the end of your virtual demo? The closing is the key. It is so important. You want to make sure that they are going to remember you and your solution. Think of it as like your PS, kind of like what you write. What is that one thing that you can help have them remember about it? So you want to revisit the main pain points before you wrap up. Remember all those issues that they're facing. For example, you mentioned spending too much time this time manually analyzing the data. That's where we're going to save you 10 hours a week, and then reinforce those benefits of the solution, right? Our tool isn't just accurate, it's scalable and integrates already with your existing tech stack. And leave them with a clear takeaway, like a proof of value. I always like to use ours with Sam. We have a 100, it's one of our fire equipments. We have a 100% repurchase rate. Find anything else like that in the market. Those final words will last longer, and they'll be giving you a follow-up call instead of just lingering in the background. So how do we make our presentation stick? It's start, anchor, present. Make sure that you don't sound like anything else. Throw away those company slides at the very beginning. They don't care who you did business with right away. Maybe something you show later, but at the very beginning, start with a bang. Do not start with your name. Even if you have to enter it, say it later, that's not how we want to start. We want to stand out. We want to use anchors that you can remember. Do you guys remember the guy who fell asleep in my demo? What did he look like? Do you remember my first car sales guy? What did he tell me? And last but not least, practice, right? Presenting with timing, pauses, questions. And then next time you see me, next time I see one of your presentations or you're presenting for me to buy a new solution, I hope I see these things into yours. So thank you, everybody. And I will stop sharing here.
Awesome. Thanks, Mila. So we have a quick turnaround with, I think the stop sharing, yep, right there, for questions. We have probably 30 seconds for each. So I will send her your names in case you guys want to follow up and get more granular. But let's kick it off real quick. Martin asked, you mentioned asking, what do you want to see in the demo? Doesn't this just detract from what you have prepared for in that meeting?
This would be prior to, so everything before the meeting. So kind of before you set up that virtual, is there anything specific that you'd like to see? That would be in your email. So something in that place, you'd already be prepared in the meeting. So you'd have your roadmap, but prior to, in some of those virtuals, you can ask that.
Awesome. Max, can you share your approach on focusing on pain points directly in a demo versus providing a high-level overview? We have a solution where I feel providing the overview brings more value than first focusing on the pain points, but I'd like to hear a different perspective.
So focusing on the overview instead of the pain points specifically?
Yes, that's
okay.
Yep.
I think it's finishing and not knowing your product, right, Max? It's how do we get to that vision, right? Where can they be and where can they come? So that would be my biggest takeaway is if you're going to start at a big picture, you don't want to start details. I would do it with a story of where you are now and where are you going to go and put that vision into place.
Awesome. Last but not least, Francis, what technologies or frameworks have you found most effective for building scalable interactive demos that replicate the full product experience?
Can you read the first part again, Lindsay?
Sure. What technologies or frameworks have you found most effective for building scalable interactive demos that replicate the full product experience?
I mean, I would say in terms of some of the technologies we use, we absolutely use Consensus to kind of replicate and put that whole pieces in there. In terms of framework, we just follow that roadmap, right? It's the 3 main points during our presentation and building those 3 big picture items right up front.
Awesome. All right, you guys, really appreciate Mila. As we begin to wrap up the season, I want to share a few exciting reminders and announcements. So be sure to stop by the virtual expo hall and visit the premier partners who've gone above and beyond to contribute to making this event a success for all of you. Don't forget to check out our raffle giveaway. Information on how to enter as well as the live leaderboard can be found pinned at the top of the public chat as well as documents tab. Make sure to check out our live DemoFest experience in New York and London. And then thank you all for joining the session. And thank you again, Mila, for your valuable insight and knowledge. Up on the screen are the upcoming sessions. You will automatically be pushed to the next session in your track, and you can switch tracks by toggling to the agenda tab at the top left of your screen. Thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.